Hey everyone, it's Luke from A Taste of AZ. Today we've got an awesome guest on the podcast, Brett Vibber. Brett's a chef, forager, teacher, and an avid outdoorsman. Eric and I always love having a talk with him because he's like an encyclopedia of all things Arizona history and ecology. So let's jump into it.
So we're with Brett Vibber. My co-host is Luke Irvin. Luke, what's up, buddy? You have a beautiful, do you hear the birds and stuff in Luke's background?
Can you hear the birds? Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been hanging
The
out
hills
in
are
this
alive
backyard
with the sound of
pretty
music.
Yes.
Exactly.
So we're here with the one and only Brett Vibber of Wild Arizona Cuisine. So Brett is spearheading the movement to highlight what truly is Arizona food. So that's foraging, now starting his own farm. Brett, what's up, buddy? How's it going?
It's actually going fine for me. It's at the moment I don't really have, that day to day. So there's a lot of foraging going on, a lot of work getting done at the farm and things of that sort. It's kind of obviously, hustling and innovating and being adaptable at the given moment, because there's still things that need to be taken care of. But in general, Elena and I mostly have been telling everyone we're kind of blessed right now. We're in a fine spot and in a position to help others more than needing help ourselves.
Yeah, dude, absolutely. Well, I don't know, man. I think highlighting what you do, your approach to food, and really just since I've gotten to know you, your approach to life is like now is a time where more people wish they knew the shit that you knew.
Yeah, my phone has been ringing quite often, and a lot of people that want to learn all about it, and that's good. Maybe that's a jump that needs to be taken, and sometimes through adversity comes some positivity, and maybe people will pay more attention to not going to the grocery store all the time and finding or growing their own food and things of that sort. So, perhaps there will be some kind of cultural shift that'll be positive for us in the end, where oftentimes you have to go through this adversity to get to another positive plateau, in the world and life and culture and whatever it may be. So, here right now, you're really seeing people, you're seeing people that are out doing good for good right now. And I think those people will come through this stronger than ever.
Who do you think are some of the better positioned businesses to not only survive this, pandemic, but also kind of help out at-home consumers? Like you've got Sonora and Postico. I've seen Barrio Bread is giving out yeast. People like that.
Well, I would say these guys here at TLC, they've been working on the front line every single day, feeding medical staffs that are quarantined, feeding power plants that have their employees quarantined. And tomorrow we're starting mobile food service at one of the rest stops up at Sunset Point, where the truckers, they don't have an ability to stay at a hotel right now, and they don't have an ability to go out to a restaurant. So, we were kind of hearing, through the grapevine, if you will, that they're eating out of gas stations or they're eating fast food and this and that. And again, these are people that are on the front lines. They've not stopped working. They're getting, toilet paper back to the stores because everyone bought it all off the shelves and freaked out. But these people have all kept working. So in a way, I think a lot of people like TLC, a lot of people like Barrio, a lot of people, like you mentioned, they've shifted their business, and they were capable and adaptable to shift their business. Where Tom and Lynn, they have groceries for sale. They have toilet paper going out in every single order. It's a humanitarian ship where people still need to eat, but they need to eat not in an entertaining way. They don't know how to get out. They don't know how to. Some people can't leave their houses right now. so we've got delivery systems going, we have pickup systems going, and like I said, these guys that I've been blessed to work around, they've been going nonstop for the last month. They quarantined themselves for 14 days at the beginning of it, and all of us have been committed to not seeing anyone outside of really each other here for a full month now.
What do you think it is about the food community that makes it so prepared and willing to step up like this?
The chefs are adaptable anyways. Good chefs are adaptable anyways, and so you see they're not going to sit still. They're gonna shift their train of thought, and they're going to adapt, and they're moving not in a different direction than chefs I think ever or thinking about at the beginning is we're just trying to feed people. So everyone has their own outlet when we have a restaurant. Someone called me bougie yesterday. I had to actually Google the word. I wasn't quite sure what it meant. But I think that's often a misinterpretation as well, as just because of how I like to put my food down on the plate and present it to you. I think you have to have a real conversation and actually know someone before you're judging on them.
So with that said, Eric and I are both very interested to hear about, some of your upbringing and how that inspired you. So if you could, I guess, just start kind of breaking down your upbringing in your early childhood growing up, really.
For me, the outdoor stuff started with my dad, for sure. And then, geez, I feel like we're talking about this all the time, Eric. It all kind of everything, teamwork, leadership, outdoors, all of that started from my dad. Being a wrestling coach, being a teacher, and just being that way kind of in his life. I think I was chatting about it last week with Eric that he's modest and humble though, so at least I can tell him, I can gloat on him, and I can toot his horn for him. But I think it all started there, and just a love,
too, right? Brett, you grew up here in Tempe?
In Tempe before it had so many paved roads.
Yeah. Damn pavement roads.
Yeah, I hate it, dude. As if it's not hot enough already.
Yeah.
No, I think his encouragement. He was heavily involved in Scouts when he was a kid, and that became a really big part of my life really early on. So I started as a Tiger Scout and went into Cub Scouts and went into Webelos and went into Boy Scouts and finished up when I was about 14, and that if for anyone that's ever been involved in Boy Scouts, in a positive and proper way, each merit badge is like a college course. It's like a crash course, and you need 20, I think, when I was in it to get your Eagle Scout, and I think I had 63 merit badges when I was done. So you get all these.
Is that like
little?
Is that like a pterodactyl scout then at that point? Like you're up the Eagle and then you've got 60. So
yeah, I don't know. I was, it was great to me because you were exposed to, anything from safety to life-saving skills to Indian lore to wilderness survival to environmental science to electricity to woodworking. It spans everything in Scout. So, that let me at an early age go as fast as I wanted, with my learning, and actually, specific learning as well, not things that were being forced on me at school, but things I was actually choosing to educate myself on. And, when I was 18, I really wanted to leave Tempe, not because I don't like Tempe, but because it was hot. And that was the original driving force is to getting out of Tempe, is to go experience something different, go experience a different climate, go experience a different culture. And, by the time I was done with that, 14 years later, I came back. I always wanted to come back and make food the way that I thought it should be made here. But it takes some time and dedication to get your education in this whole world. So between Italy and Panama and LA and Chicago. I just worked my way around, figuring out what I liked, what I didn't like, and you know, it was all part of a bigger puzzle that we were going to put together when we finally did get back here and kind of launch into food how we want to make it.
Why did you?
So-
I was gonna say, what made you want to? When did you realize food was your direction?
Let's see. It's the only job I've ever had. I'd say by 6 or 7 years old.
Really?
Oh, wow.
How? Like, what was your? I mean,
My mom is a phenomenal cook. You know, through that whole latchkey generation, you know, bullshit that you know, kids didn't eat home cooked meals in the 80s and 90s and all that crap. That wasn't us. My mom worked a full-time job either as a nurse or a school teacher growing up. But we still had home cooked meal every night. On top of that, my grandma, her mom, phenomenal cook as well. So I grew up around these people that were paying attention to, you know, their ingredients and how they prepared them, and it was just instilled in me early to, you know, gather around food. It's no matter what was going on with our family, and we had a busy family growing up, we sat down and we had dinner every night together, and that speaks volumes more than just the food. It's the experience, it's the culture, it's the community, it's literally bringing the family together, and that's how I want to serve food to the general public. I want you to feel that way, you know, when you're eating with me.
Did your mom and grandma have like a style? Like, I think like my mother-in-law, it's like cheese, butter, flour, right? You know?
Yeah, are they from the Midwest too?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Minnesota.
So my parents came from Michigan just a couple of years before I was born, and yeah, I'm sure a lot of that Scottish and German blood trickled right through the Midwest and out to Arizona, and yeah, there's a lot of potatoes and chicken and cheese and butter, and yeah, I didn't say it was healthy. Why do you think I walk 16 miles a day?
So one thing I wanted to ask you too, Brett, was like, so wrestling is notorious for being like one of the, if not the most like disciplined sport, right? So where do you see like how you grew up, like with your dad being a coach and you being a phenomenal wrestler? What do you use now? Like, what are some of those things that you use that you see the parallels between being a chef and
everything? It's I mean, I've told cooks a number of times, like, this is nothing compared to some of the other things I've done in my entire life as far as hard, you know. It's mentally demanding in a kitchen, it's physically demanding, but it's nothing like being in the middle of a wrestling mat with just one other guy who wants to kill you, and you want to kill him. It's totally different. I was fortunate enough to you know, grow up and learn how to walk with wrestling shoes on, but it was something early on in life that you saw how each individual adds to the team effort. And it's just like that in the kitchen. If the saute guy fucks up, the whole kitchen's fucked up. You know, if the dishwasher doesn't show up, the whole kitchen's fucked up. Not necessarily the whole kitchen, the whole restaurant. The whole restaurant feels when one position's not doing its part or can't do its part. And it's the same thing in a wrestling match. You know, you've got a guy that's not pulling his weight and not doing his best to be there and on time. You're not adding to the greater makeup of the team. You're not adding to the greater makeup of the community. That's all a team is. It's a community of people, and hopefully with common goals. So even you know, when people don't have, I've worked in kitchens and I've been on a lot of wrestling teams where I didn't like everyone that's on the team, but we had a common goal of coming together, you know, for an achieved destination, something that was wanted and desired by everyone on the team. So, you know, be it be it a kitchen trying to win a Michelin star or a wrestling team trying to win a national championship, it's exactly the same to me. And I've had people tell me at different points in time, like, this is not a wrestling team. Like, the fuck it isn't. It is. Everything's a team. And without working as a team, you see this, you know, individuals seldom can sustain themselves all on their own. So you're seeing this happening right now is real teams, real individuals coming together for a common goal, like all these guys right here. It's that greater sense of community where when we're done with this, you're gonna know who's on your team.
That's a good way to put it. I like that.
Well, and it's interesting to see that the way that the food and beverage industry are obviously very closely related. But, you know, it's interesting to see the collaborations. You got chefs like, you know, Jeff Krause cooking for Wilderness and things like that. Stuff like what you guys are doing right now, not directly into the industry, but, you know, it's associated in certain ways. And so it's really that's definitely one of the silver linings of everything going on right now, is seeing how local really does support itself. And it shows the importance of supporting local businesses, because that's really what it all comes down to when you're trying to build an economy.
Absolutely. It's you're seeing the small guys come together to make themselves a big guy right now. Because you're finally getting to a point where the small guys are saying, like, we're not going to take this shit anymore, you know, for lack of better terminology, because they're sick of getting shit on. They're sick of watching a big, you know, corporation that drives millions and millions and millions of dollars a year in taxes into our federal government. We're not going to do that anymore. We're gonna band together and fend for ourselves, and you know, like I said, it's through these things, these adversities, that hopefully positive change comes in the end. And this is something that that our kids never have to deal with. I think that's something that's driving at the end of the day is the folks that are actually trying to leave a better world or create a better world for the next generation or generations to come. I don't think often that people consciously think about that enough.
Absolutely. Well, and you know, when we went out and did the foraging shoot recently, seeing the knowledge that your son had and just his independence, you said, go out and find some sticks. And he goes out and does just that and comes back with sticks for the fire and then watches you, you know, make a delicious meal out of it. And, you know, I'm not trying to talk bad on my dad or anything, but he never taught me anything that cool. And getting footage of him just running around with all the greenery around, it doesn't really get much more picturesque than that. And growing up with those kind of influences, even if you don't go into a cooking career, it's just such incredible knowledge to have. And it gives you so much more appreciation for where we are in the history of the world when you understand that several hundred years ago, people had to pick food out of the ground.
Right.
There wasn't agriculture the way it was now and mass scale production and whatnot. And so seeing you handing that down to him was incredible.
That's my friend, Abby.
What's up, Abby?
So, right. I think through no fault of anyone's, but just time and in my opinion, luxuries of technology have eliminated what people thought previous until about a month ago. What were actual needs? What were actual necessities? Where the kids don't necessarily need math right now. They need biology and they need life skills and they need to learn how to cook. They need to learn how to change a tire on a car. They need to learn how to check the oil. They need to know how to make a fire a couple of different ways. They need to know where to dig for water. They need to know how to sanitize the water and things like that. Everyone doesn't need to live their life that way all the time, but to own and possess those skills are invaluable.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the teach a man to fish mentality, but you got to do it at the bottom level before, you know, as awesome as it is to know how to program. If you don't know how to have food in your pantry, it doesn't matter how good of a computer programmer or an engineer, any of that stuff is, if you don't have that bottom line set. Which is, it's crazy how much, you know, this pandemic and all that is showing the importance of having a supply chain near you, which is obviously very close to your ethos and what you do.
Yep.
And so Brett, jump back a little bit. So you decided you want to get out of Tempe, too hot. So where do you go from there?
Originally to Flagstaff.
Okay. So you went from like right out of high school to go to Flagstaff?
Yeah, about
Yeah.
2 days after graduation.
Yeah. For what? Like what was the goal there?
Get out of the heat. Get out of the heat for the summer and figure out a game plan. That was the driving force was not necessarily to go to school at that point, but I just wanted to get out, do something different. Different with the climate, different than, the demographic I'd been used to. So my brother was up in Flagstaff and said, why don't you come up here and live and, figure it out. And stayed in Flagstaff for about a year before the itch to wrestle the rest of the way through college came back. So I was a little burned out on wrestling right after high school. And so I went to Tucson and wrestled for a couple of years at EMA and went back to kind of somewhere that my dad had been friends with my college wrestling coach for pretty much my whole life. And wrestling, just like kitchens has small circles. And so, I called him up and said, I'm a year out and I'm fat and I haven't done anything to myself well in a year. And would you still be open to having me on the wrestling team? And he said, yeah, see you August 1st. So I got myself back into shape and worked out. Luckily, my dad was still coaching and worked out with his team and his weight room and him a bunch, getting my ass back in shape and getting down there to wrestle. And at this point, I already knew I wanted to be a chef. So for a couple of years of college, was just a chef at a sports bar, kind of off the beaten path in Tucson, just in one of the neighborhoods. And as soon as I was done with school, I ditched out on that to look for chefs, look for the best restaurants in the world, in the country, wherever I needed to be. The best chefs, in my opinion, and for things that lined up for me, and that ended up someone just bought the whole farm. So we're selling all these meat packages as well out of here. So not just meal prep, but basic groceries and cheese, paper towels, toilet paper, things like that we could get our hands on to be able to get back out to the public. But after Tucson, I didn't, or after school, I didn't have anything to do except focus on my career, and it was a real conscious moment that I thought about, I don't have anything to do except work from now on, and I can set all of my sights on this. And for the first time really in my entire life, I wasn't competing, I wasn't cutting weight, I wasn't in school, I was just focused on work, and it took off from there. So from there, it's a longer story than probably the podcast allows for itself, but
tell us some stories, man. Tell us some
no,
stories.
I just it's taken me from Rome to Panama to LA to Chicago and back home finally.
Well, I like the story. I don't know if you were going to dig into this, but I want to make sure we don't pass this up. Is the story of you going to Italy and not knowing shit, right? Not even knowing how to get through the transportation system, right?
Right. I mean, I've always traveled, and obviously in my youth with naivety, but the first time, people had told me get a Frommer's and get a guidebook and check out all the touristy places. That's the kind of shit I've always tried to stay out of. I want to experience the real culture, and I want to experience the real people, not the tourist traps. So I probably could have done a little more research before the first trip, but yeah, I got to the airport and I was stoked. I got off the plane and realized from there I had no clue what I was doing.
You didn't even have a place to stay, did you?
No, God, no. No, because everyone had always told me that there's hostels, and so I just thought there would be hostels everywhere. The streets lined with hostels, and they'd be there,
bright lights,
open arms, yeah, welcoming me in, and it would be something incredible. Well, I don't know if you've ever been to Leonardo da Vinci Airport in Rome. It's not in Rome.
Okay.
It's a train ride away from Rome. So I didn't even know how to get to Rome from the airport. No one, obviously, massive quantities weren't speaking English around me. And I realized in that moment, you're probably in over your head. So finally, someone taught me how to get on the train, buy a ticket. And so I get to the Grand Terminal in downtown Rome. And it's essentially the same thing playing out again, okay, cool. So now I'm in Rome. Where the fuck do I go now? Like, where are these hostels? So I get my backpack and, everything that I own in my backpack. And I proceed to walk around Rome for about 9 hours. And I think it was August, and it was hot and it was humid. And by the time the sun was starting to go down, I just said, screw it. And I found a hotel and spent way more money probably than I should have on a room for the night. But the next day we started formulating real plans, talking to the concierge and asking where a hostel was. And from there, it mostly got better. There were other trials and tribulations throughout the journey, but those first 2 days were trying 48 hours for me.
Well, then, so you found a place to work, right? You were kind of scouting out like where you wanted to try to. Right?
Originally I wanted to learn how to make pizzas from the land of pizzas, and so eventually, late at night over a conversation, I chatted with the owner of the pizzeria that I'd been frequenting, and I liked his pizza, and I just kind of told him like, hey, I cook over in the States, and I would love to come and help you or anything. And he said, really? He said, okay, cool. He said, I've got this kid that's been coming from Utah for like 6 years on his daddy's penny every summer, thinking he's going to become a chef. We let him pour the beers and sell the food, but you come back in the kitchen and make the pizzas with me. So I thought that was that was pretty special. And a couple of days into that, he said, everyone takes a break from 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock every day. He said, but that's actually when I make the dough. He said, if you want to stick around today, I'll show you how to make the dough. So I thought, well, that's something that I don't think his dad had shown him, because his father owned a pizza place, but I don't think he'd ever shown anyone. He wasn't married. He didn't have kids or anything like that. And I'll never forget that moment. And even like the grilled flatbread that you had at Cartwright's is a derivative of that recipe, even though it's got mesquite and probably a juniper starter from natural yeast nowadays. It's still Paolo's pizza dough recipe.
Yeah, dude, that's awesome. It's probably still vivid in your mind of that. Like, as you're saying it, like I'm envisioning it. Like I obviously envision him with like a handlebar mustache and like the tall hat.
I'll let you keep. Yeah, hold on to that.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting to hear that perspective of how special that moment was for you, where you're learning maybe the most technical aspect of cooking that you've learned up until that point in your life. And now to see how things have really come full circle, and teaching is such a big part of what you do. Were there any other moments early on that had that same kind of effect, where you look back on it to this day?
The first chef I ever worked for was Bruce Yim. He was a James Beard nominee in 2001, right before I started working for him. I have countless moments with him like that. I came to him as just a raw, talented, passionate young cook, and I'd been a chef at places already, but that was the real first kitchens I worked in, the real first chef I worked for, where every day I was having this. I'd been cutting up carrots and celery and onions for stocks and sauces and soups and things for years. I never knew it was called mirepoix. And things like that, where I had even told him, like, at one point he was getting ready to promote me to sous chef, and I kind of pulled him aside and said, like, yeah, I don't know, I don't think I'm ready to be a sous chef for you, because I don't know all the words you guys are saying all the time. Like, I know how to make a cream sauce, but I didn't know it's called velouté. And he was like, who cares what the French people call it?
Yeah, they're out there.
So,
and that was eye-opening.
At what point did things shift more like that, and what did that shift look like?
Shift more like what?
Shift into a little bit more, I don't necessarily want to say serious, but a little bit more of like the professional side, if you will.
As I was finishing college and could actually set my sight in college, we got up for wrestling practice at 5 a.m. That was usually finished by 6:30 or 7. Enough time to get showered up and get to class all day. And then wrestling practice again after school, and then strength and conditioning practice after that. And then a full-time job. So mostly in somewhere in there squeezing studies and actually passing your classes. But so most of my time through college, I was working jobs in restaurants that were just paying the bills. They weren't passion based, and I think that probably helped explode it after I was done with school, because I had 4 years of wants and desires that I couldn't fulfill while I was in school. So it was at that point where I like I said, I had that conscious realization of, I don't have shit to do except be the best that I can be at whatever I'm deciding to be. And I'd already decided on being a chef. So from there, I'd say a lot of times I let it take me where it seemed like it needed to take me, and not, I didn't want to live in Chicago. I never wanted to move to Chicago. I never had that plan or that desire, but the job took me there. So I let it take me there. And I wasn't done learning yet. I wasn't done with my education side yet. I needed that big city, run a, multi-million-dollar, huge volume restaurant. I needed that experience, and it all lends to what we're doing now. Just as much as I've learned from positive interactions, I've learned from negative interactions as well, of what I'm not going to repeat and what I am going to change in the business, and how I'm not going to, fit the status quo. We can break that mold. We don't have to do things always the same way you've been taught. But if you've learned something from the path and the journey, then you have the ability to change things and do things differently. So I think just as you end up in positive situations, you end up in negative situations. But what do you as an individual take from that? What do you learn? What do you apply? And how do you bring the change on from there?
Yeah.
So you're in Italy and you're learning all this stuff and really starting to develop. Kind of run through where things go from there and in what ways your cooking continued to develop forward.
Well, I would say I've kind of been hooked on this this push of American cuisine for a long time, of where do we fit in, with our own cuisine. And, for so long we had chefs go to France and train and come back and open a French restaurant. Chefs go to Italy and train and come back and open an Italian restaurant, or work in Italian restaurant concepts and things of that sort, where I never wanted to be that way. In the end, I wasn't gonna take someone else's culture and bring it back. I wanted to be more influenced by what I learned. So again, back to Bruce. He was that way as well. He's that way to this day as well. Is American cuisine is obviously an influence from all over the world. So I'd spent a lot of time focused on Italian cuisine for so long that I was, at some point, I was realizing I was neglecting the other half of the world. So the drive, I left Bruce at one point to go work for Roca Accor in Scottsdale. So we opened that location, and I worked at that location for about a year, and then I actually went back to work for Bruce to open up his second restaurant in Tucson. I went back fairly briefly until the job in Panama came along. Job in Panama was really appealing because at that point I had Italian experience. I had kind of the American steakhouse experience, and I kind of had that, Nouvelle cuisine, new American experience, and I'd gotten into Asian cuisine. Well, those were all the restaurants that they had down there in Panama, so that felt like a natural fit for me, and that was a temporary job and basically an overall consult, but it was cool to. It was probably the first time in my career that I was, using every cooking skill that I'd acquired along the way with, the steakhouse needs help today, or, the Asian concept is getting open we need help with the Italian restaurant tonight, where, I started feeling like, what if we put all this together in one restaurant with one chef's ideas? And, what if, now at this point, I've kind of been around the world and I kind of know, what I like, but what if, what if this is the way it's supposed to be for my place through the scope of regional ingredients and products here, So how do we, probably from there, 8, 9, 10 years ago, I started developing the concept of what I wanted to do here back in Phoenix. So I think, at one point, especially in Chicago, I thought I'm done doing one kind of cuisine. I'm done doing Japanese food. I'm done doing Italian food. I'm not just going to work in a steakhouse. How do we bring all this together? And I mean, I think you guys all saw that with Cartwrights. And then, just as, we touch on adapting and evolving, I think after a few years, I evolved to a point where I know more of what I want. I want to be somewhere smaller. I want to be somewhere with, a wide open kitchen where I can chat with my customers. I want them to make sure that they know exactly why and how special everything is. I've been watching this pot of water boil for too long. But that's just it for me now, and it's not in a weird way, but it's a peaceful place to be, knowing exactly what you want to do. The emulation part of your career is over, and the where do I fit into the world part of your career is over, and I know exactly what direction I'm going.
Did you know that you wanted to do what you do now, like the foraging, that like leading, like really doing what a lot of people, I don't want to sound wrong, but what a lot of people want to do, or a lot of people say they do, of like, oh, farm to table, right? We know that's much more complicated than it seems.
When people ask if I'm farm to table, I say, where the fuck do you think your produce came from?
Yeah. And you even
what matters is, huh?
I said you even drop the F-bomb when you tell them that too.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. What a dumb, in a culture and a time where we live in these cliches and we need a fucking hashtag for everything. It's really, everything comes, the produce at Taco Bell comes from a farm. Yeah. It's farm to table. Great. Yeah. What farm? How was it? Who's the farmer? How does he treat his product? Have you been there? That's important. I would never serve any piece of food that I have not stepped foot on that property. And that even goes to like these guys. Yeah. That's why I serve their seafood, because I've been on that organic
for people
ocean.
Listening in, Organic Ocean, which is
Vancouver-based seafood company, but I fish the commercial salmon season with them, and that all came out of a born desire of like, I can't say I'm I've been on this cattle ranch and I know the people that raise my lambs, I know the people that raise our chickens and ducks and geese, and I raise my food and I forage, but we just bought this seafood from some guy.
Yeah.
It can't be that way. So it was born out of a desire and the same desire that I have with all the products of I'm going to need to see this with my own eyes. I'm going to need to touch it with my own hands. And that's something that's always been that way for me. I didn't want to learn culinary at a school out of a book from someone's stories. I wanted to go make my own story.
Yeah. So if I'm hearing that right, so it's for you from the beginning, that's just always been the way it's been, right?
It's always been, and somehow I've always found myself in restaurants that were that way as well.
Yeah.
That were passion driven rather than financially driven. Obviously, we all need to pay our bills at the end of the day, but a passion driven restaurant and a passion driven chef is so different than a financially driven chef. So yeah, I mean, the maitre d' at the restaurant at one of the restaurants in Italy, he foraged all the truffles on his property. And you know, my first day in a restaurant in Italy was being taken around the market, the open air market, and being shown who to buy basil from it, who to buy tomatoes from it, who to buy bread from it, who to buy cheese from it. There's a lot of guys selling bread and cheese, but we're not buying the shit. We're going to buy from the good guys. So I've always been fortunate enough to be around that kind of stuff. What's really cool is Tucson's farmers market scene 12, 13 years ago was decades ahead of a lot of other places that I'd been.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Well, I think Tucson is one of those cities too that people don't understand the agriculture, or what is it, the gastronomy, right?
Yep.
They're the city of gastronomy, like the first in the US. Is that right?
Yeah,
Something like
were recognized. They were definitely the first one. But yeah, I can't quite remember what their exact title is at a given point in time.
But it's cool because it's a blend of like the culinary scene, but it also brings in the agriculture, and like it's a whole encompassing thing. It's not just like, oh, the best chefs or the best.
No, definitely not.
Right? Yeah.
The chefs down in Tucson, and there's a lot of good chefs in Tucson. The chefs in Tucson and really all embrace not just the agriculture, but kind of the culture in general and the history in general, where, you know, we were using products from Ramona Farm in Tucson 15 years ago. We were using, you know, native seed search 15 years ago in Tucson. And it's all obviously close or based out of Tucson, but you know, stuff that's become trendy here now, that they were part of. It was part of my upbringing in kitchens, were some of those products and some of those farms that you think now, like, why wouldn't I use this?
Yeah.
And you feel like a jerk if you don't.
Yeah.
That's an interesting point too, is, you know, there is all this history, and there's so much special about Arizona in terms of food, not just in, you know, the current generation of things, but hundreds of years ago with Native Americans and whatnot. But on a national scale, it's really not recognized very much at all. And even by people in Arizona, you know, myself included, I was unaware how many heritage grains are grown and then made into high quality pasta that I can get at, you know, an AJ's or a grocery store near me. And once I started learning those things and seeing those connections and seeing it not only in food, but also in beverage as well, I had no idea how many local distillers and whatnot there were. People like yourself that are telling these stories through their food, I think, are really instrumental in, you know, like you said, trendy, not necessarily a positive connotation with the word trendy, but building a trend towards more sustainable, more locally driven food and beverage. And, you know, like we touched on earlier, this whole pandemic thing is showing why that's so important. Well, it was important before all of this happened anyways. And, you know, stuff that you're doing is shining a light on that. And, you know, Eric and I say it all the time. Once you have that experience with beer or food or whatever it may be, where you understand the local side of it and all that went into it, and you get to meet the farmer, like the people over from Grain R&D, it becomes so much more of a special thing. And you see, like, the Wilderness guys post a picture with the dude from Grain R&D after they just did a beer using their grains, and then it gets served at Cotton and Copper or something like that. There's just a web of connections that makes it so much more beautiful and romantic. And people like yourself that are creating that really, really inspire Eric and I both.
Thanks, dude. Well, yeah, I mean, it's just that this conversation has played out with a number of people over the last month where, like, you see now I wasn't doing it just for a concept.
Yeah.
This is the way it I would say if I ever thought I was going to do anything else other than cook, it would have been a PE teacher and a wrestling coach, just like my dad. And I would still be doing all the exact same things in my free time. I'd still be pickling. I'd still be harvesting. I'd still be foraging. I'd still be camping, hunting, fishing. I would still be taking care of my family in that way, not necessarily just to feed them, but again, to instill some skills and in basic life skills that everyone should possess. I remember in high school, I had a girlfriend that called me and said she had a flat tire. And I said, okay, so change it. And she said, I don't know how. So you don't know how to change a tire? I mean, it was flabbergasting to me because one, I probably popped more tires than anyone except Jared, my sous chef. But it's those kinds of things that, like, self-reliance has been lost, and I think a lot of it's been lost through technology. And
Absolutely.
Over the course of time, where we've cut industrial arts out of schools, and we've cut home ec out of schools, and we've cut all the life skill stuff out of schools to make room for math and sciences and things that, don't get me wrong, I find important and I find essential, but not more essential than knowing how to be self-reliant and taking care of yourself. It's really, I mean, for me, I think Eric and you and I talked about it a month or so ago when I brought the soil over. Is I never worried about running out of toilet paper. I'm worried about the people that are buying $10,000 worth of toilet paper. I'm worried about that train of thought. I'm worried about where is that coming from? What's your logic there? Where one, I never worried about it, and we still never ran out, and I wouldn't have worried about it if I did run out. But it just goes to show, like, where people are finding their comforts, and that's why that's why the stores were full of people for so long, is because I think people just felt comfortable there. It felt like something normal that they were holding on to, or where I'm, I guess, the opposite. I'm okay. And at our house, we try to have 4 to 6 months worth of basic supplies in general, just because that's how I think you should live. Not out of fear of what could happen, but the Boy Scout motto is be prepared. Very simple, 2 words. And I try and live my entire life by it. And I always have. And so I've told people I'm not panicked. I'm prepared. And it's not something that I just prepared a month ago. We just live our lives that way. So in general, I would like to be prepared. I'm not going to be the guy on my heels responding to things. Your brain never stops. Always think. What is your next step? What are you drinking in there? Are you trying to hide it?
This is
water. It's not noon.
This is nah. Oh, I'd be proud. That would be on full display. That's 40 ounces of freedom right there, man.
Yeah, for sure. I was just listening to that album yesterday.
Oh man, one of the best of all time.
One of the best of all time.
Yeah.
But I think that's just the thing, and I felt bad over this course of time. A lot of people have reached out and said, like, can I come foraging with you? And you're like, not right now, because I'm trying to keep my kids healthy, and I'm trying to keep my end up of the bargain here and stay in self-quarantine, so that none of these guys have seen their families in over a month.
Wow. Why?
Their immediate family, perhaps, but I mean, the ones that are here,
sure,
that have no one has seen anyone outside of their immediate family since this started.
Yeah.
And so my mom and dad live just down the road, and I haven't seen them in a month or so. That kind of stuff is tough. That's real life stuff where I'm not worried about likes on Instagram. I'm worried, that my parents are in that susceptible age and they're still idiots that think it's not real.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and that's the kind of sacrifice that, obviously being a chef, you make a lot of sacrifices with your time and stress levels, particularly when you're owning a restaurant.
Yes.
But, when people are going out to buy food because they don't want to make dinner at home, when I did it just the other day, I'm assuming that these people that are working in the kitchens are making those kinds of sacrifices, and you're, verifying it, that you guys are doing these things not just because, not at all because you want to, but because you have to, and because you realize the responsibilities that you guys have in front of you and how important what you provide is.
Right. You get to a point where, I can't drive past Sunset Point anymore, seeing those hundreds of truckers up there. That it's not right that they're out there on the front line. They're driving. They've not slowed down. They're working overtime. But then what? They get to eat Chex Mix from the truck stop. That's not right. So, like I said, it's not even most. Tom and Lynn right now, they've built the new business on breaking even. It's mostly to keep the staff employed and the people that need to eat eating. This is not a sustainable way for any restaurant that's doing takeout or any caterer that's doing takeout to sustain their business. Obviously, that's, again, probably a whole other podcast talk. But again, you've seen these people that are actually humanitarians, that they're doing anything they can for the better of the common people right now. And like I said, for me, just to be a small part of that, on different levels, is humbling, because now we see that it's not just an entertaining thing. It's not, it's not just fun to go out to the restaurant on Friday or Saturday night. We need to eat. This is something. This is an essential part of our lives. We need to eat good food. Again, I've lost sleep watching or thinking about these truckers that are eating bags of potato chips as they cross the country, getting us essential products, be it medical equipment, be it food, be it toilet paper that needs to be restocked because some asshole bought all of it. It's again, I think you get to a point where it's so ingrained within you that you're going to start losing sleep over it. You're going to start worrying about people, on a level of, I don't want these people just to be eating my food. I want these people to be being taken care of.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, and, obviously the world is not a perfect system, right? But things like this are just getting us closer and closer to, the hopeful end goal of reaching a better system, at least, where,
the world in itself is a perfect place. The people
sure
are full of the imperfection. So yes, my greatest hope is that that this can be some kind of huge wake up call, a huge worldwide wake up call that that changes how we take care of employees that that are on the front lines of whatever anything may be. So that means hopefully this changes our public school system. Hopefully this changes our healthcare system. Hopefully this changes how we're taxed, how we can acquire emergency funds, all of that stuff that obviously wasn't in place for this. Hopefully it never repeats itself. The worst thing you can do is repeat history and replicate it. But we're so often quick to forget history that we've reached a point where some kids don't know the truth even about the Holocaust. Where we get so far removed from some of our history that we don't educate our kids on what happened with natives when Europeans first got here. And people are imperfect, and we are the imperfect system, but I think the best thing we can do, my kids and I talk about history nonstop because that's how the truth continues, and that's how the truth prevails. that's how we hopefully don't replicate some of the bad things we've done, whether it's war, whether it's religion, whether it's pandemics and disease or anything of that. Hopefully we get smarter and better with each fuddle up.
Yeah.
So then what I'll ask you is like, what is your biggest takeaway from this whole thing, whether it's food sustainability, like what is something specific people should focus on and really think about coming out of this in your eyes?
I think the biggest thing to me probably, and you're seeing it manifest itself anyways, is we just need to slow down in general. Eric, I think you and I were talking about it at your place a few weeks ago, is look how many people don't have to be at work that often, or look how long homeschooling your kids actually takes.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Right. I mean, like the school day is obviously teaching our children hopefully about other things just than the books that are in their face. But look at how I have a lot of time to teach my kids outside of just an actual standardized curriculum, where we're able to be outside, pretty quick in the morning. So I guess my greatest hope is that I've grown up watching the world get faster and faster and faster around me. I'm on that weird chunk of time that I was born without all this technology, and it was all introduced in my lifetime, where I fall into like that weird right before millennials and right after whatever it was, Generation X, where I grew up with all this stuff, watching it get put into place, watching cell phones, watching just video games from the first Atari to where we are now. Look how it's sped up. Our culture has done that as well at the same time. Cell phones, people want to have cars that drive themselves because they're in that much of a hurry and they have so much busy work to fill their lives with that again, for me, there's a little bit of serenity in this moment where, okay, the farm's being worked. Okay, we're doing some work with the community to help pay the bills that need to be paid. The kids are being taught, and all the while, it's a little bit of serenity through all of this.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I don't know. It seems like everybody I talk to kind of has that same kind of vibe. It's like, man, this is actually, I mean, we're lucky. We're grateful.
Right. Outside of the tragedies that are occurring.
Yeah.
And that's not lost on me by any means.
Yeah, absolutely.
Outside of that, I'm only speaking to how life actually is in its physical state right now, our day to day, where the roads obviously don't need to be packed at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. The stores don't need to be packed on Saturday mornings. It's a little, hopefully there's lots of small lessons, but an overall lesson of we have the ability to slow down.
Yeah.
And I think most people are enjoying that. At least the ones I've that I speak with, where we've interjected so many things into our lives that make us busy. Sure. that aren't necessities. That we're kind of seeing that now. I mean, I even talk to friends that are still, not in this industry, or even, family members that are, kind of off in the corporate world, and again, not in this industry where, they're getting their work. They used to work 110 hours a week. They traveled 1 week out of the month to a different country, and now they're like, dude, I'm getting my work done from home, from my computer. I don't think I ever need to be in Manila again. I don't think I ever need to be in Barcelona again. And my brother kind of has a job similar to this, where, he's realizing like I can get all my work done from home. He's kind of in the tech world and things like that, where we were realizing like, man, we were making ourselves really busy.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing where like, my kids are getting more exercise right now. I'm positive than they do in the normal course of any given day. And I think that speaks volumes as well. We so often, we've become this, in some people's opinion, we've become this really smart nation. Thinkers, inventors, a lot of good has come from American innovation. But at the same time, we're also fat, we're lazy, we don't exercise, we've eliminated PE from schools. We didn't bring it up in a balance, if you will. We didn't raise all these things that could be beneficial to us while maintaining a balance. We just started eliminating everything. Even when I was a kid in high school, you had to take PE for 4 years. By the time I was done with high school, you had to take it for 1 year, and you could get exempt from it if you wrote a letter to someone.
I have asthma. You have asthma because you're gigantic and
yeah,
you can't breathe.
Right.
Well, Brett, always good talking to you, man. But obviously things are on pause for everybody right now, but
yep.
what is on the forefront for Brett Vibber?
I can honestly tell you right now at this point, Jaron and I both, since we're partnered for Wild, I think we're waiting to see how this shakes out.
Okay.
So when this shakes out, if this shakes out and we all go back to restaurants and this and that, then you'll see Wild get open real quick. In the meantime,
Wild Arizona Cuisine is the restaurant that you're looking to open,
that we're designing. Yeah. And we're in the midst of designing and getting ready to build out.
Yeah.
when things shifted. But in the meantime, like I said, we have a lot with the Scott Foundation, the foster kids that we work with. We're building a commercial kitchen for them right now so that we can move forward with their educational system. I feel very, very, very strongly about that as well, where these kids are aging out of, government assistance, but they don't have family, they've not been adopted, and a bit of guidance. So, we've expanded that over the course of in the last 3 years, it's gone from about 7 kids in the foundation to about 30 now. So again, there's more funding coming in for that, which allows us to do different things, stuff that I was already doing, when we had Cartwrights, and stuff that I'll continue to do when we have the restaurant. But in the meantime, I'm doing what's needed of me.
Yeah. Love it, man. Love it.
So if that's, these guys here needing help a couple days a week, if it's, I obviously planted, and it's been a couple months since you guys have been at the farm, but I obviously planted with the idea of opening the restaurant in October, which I can tell you won't happen. I had that plan, as well as anything that was going to be excess for the summertime while we're doing these pop-ups. I thought for sure, give it to Tamara, give it to Dom, give it to Corey, give it to friends, not even so, because I'm also still learning and trying a lot of things at the farm and trying to do things differently. But so in the meantime, the farm has exploded over the last month while this has all happened. So we're harvesting about 40 pounds of spinach a week, about 20 pounds of glacier lettuce a week. We're just a couple of weeks away from having hundreds and hundreds of corn plants ready. And we also have 32 different types of tomatoes growing, but in an abundance of over 120 plants.
Wow. I have 2 tomatoes and they're both green right now. So
nice.
Start somewhere though, right? Start somewhere.
I mean, and all my, I see a lot of people through this and like, hey, it takes a long time. And I think only farmers and fishermen and chefs and people that are used to this patience, it takes a long time to turn 5 wild acres into a revenue producing farm. And not that I even want it for revenue production right now, but in terms of just actual production, everything came from seeds on my property. You know, we live a little higher at a little higher elevation than the Phoenicians do up in New River. So I'm almost at 3,000 feet elevation. So, you know, the timing and when things are getting planted. And I had a late frost a couple weeks ago that lost 40 plants. Bless you.
Thank you. I muted my microphone. Or did you hear me? Did I not mute my microphone?
No.
All right.
No. I wish you didn't. I wish you didn't, but yeah. Sneeze face. But that's just it right now. So, I mean, I've also been, you know, trying to get that out to anyone that's in the food industry and still producing food. If you need anything from the farm, let me know.
Love it, man. Love it. I can't wait to get back up there, put my kids to work too, you know.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. They're free labor's the best.
Yeah. So B Vibber, that's VIBBER. That's you on Instagram. And you guys also have the Wild Arizona Cuisine on Instagram as well. So, dude, love watching your stuff. Love just hanging out with you, man, talking to you. And
same.
Obviously the food is, you know, next level. And I just got to throw this out there. I have to apologize to you on public. Is this on public? Is this considered public? For
yes.
Brett's nice enough, you know, about a month ago to bring me a truckload of dirt from my garden, and I give him some stale ass Coronas.
Dude, it was actually the best Corona I'd ever had.
So
I don't know
because the secret.
Right. I don't know if it was because it had been 20 years since I'd had one, or it was starting to warm up a little bit. I don't know. I can honestly say that at first I was like, yeah, I'll have a Corona, whatever. Yeah. And then I had a little sip of it and thought, it's tasting better than any Corona I've ever had.
That's the secret then. That's the secret.
Yep.
Make them stale. So,
you see.
All right, buddy. Well, hey, we'll let you go.
All right, guys.
Thanks
much
so
love.
much, man. You too, buddy.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks for the time.
Yeah.
All right, later, dudes.
Talk to you soon, man.
Later. Cheers.
Well, there you have it, guys. We hope you liked the interview. Make sure you follow Brett as well as us on social media. Give the video a like and subscribe below.